and share my screen. All right, so today, what we're going to be working on is advanced expanded HTML and CSS. So remember, your portfolio project is due Thursday. So even if you did it, I just gave you guys extra time because it's the first one. Usually it's going to be like a weekend thing, or if it's a bigger project, you get a week. But since this was more, I felt like it could have been more complex. So I expanded it to like Thursday. The project, the block 10, that's going to be due Monday. So just make sure, like, even though you're getting extended time, just still try to do it like it's due the next day. I'm just trying to be nice and just make sure that you guys have enough time to finish everything. Cool. All right, so today we're going to be doing block 10, expanded CSS and HTML. So we're going to take what you all learn and expand the boundaries a bit. So you're going to learn more advanced concepts with regards to CSS and HTML, just more functionality to how to make things simple. It's supposed to make it simple, but they're a tad bit complex for the beginner eye. All right, so today we're going to do learning teams. So we're not going to do learning teams today. We're just going to get straight to it because it's a lot of material and I just want to make sure you guys get everything. We're just going to do expanded HTML, CSS. We're going to do expanded CSS and a guided practice and block 10 workshop on the Picasso painting. So we'll go into detail like that. Like I said, it's a lot of concepts. So you may feel like, oh, this is too much information all at once, but bear with me. I'm going to try to see if I can push content to Thursday, but if we get through enough, that's what we have. And just try to use the videos as resource if you can. There's also other resources like MDN and documentation. So just make sure you understand it. The competency check, that's going to be due Friday as well. And just try to finish the workshop. Remember, if you don't finish it, just turn it in for a progress check. But at the same time, though, if it's not complete, try to go back and finish it. You need to try to learn things as opposed to just turning in anything. Try to go through that difficult struggle and get better, because that's the only way you're going to grow as an engineer if you actually complete all these blocks. Cool. All right. So after today's lesson, you all should be able to create functionality layouts in CSS Grid and CSS Flex, demonstrate the use of various kinds of CSS units, demonstrate the use of more advanced CSS selectors, demonstrate the use of more advanced CSS rules, identify different elements of an HTML form, including form, inputs, and the submit button, explain the purpose of HTML form and the functionality behind the form submission, explain the process of and differences between CSS Grid and CSS Flex, and explain the use of the purpose of styling libraries and frameworks. All right, so before I start, I actually want to do something. So you guys have Netlify, right? You guys are supposed to put your portfolio projects on Netlify. So Netlify is just a place where we can deploy like HTML, CSS, vanilla JavaScript items. Netlify.com. All right, so first place you go to is you're going to log in. So I logged in with my GitHub account. So you can do that as well, and it connects your GitHub account to whatever you're trying to do. So how you're going to deploy is you're going to go to build or sites, and then add a new site. And I like to do it manually. You can do it through GitHub, but there's a lot of discrepancies with it. But you can go to deploy manually, and all you're going to do is go to the folder where your file, your HTML file is. So like I have this HTML JavaScript file that I created, and you're going to drag it. So just take the folder and drag it. Just simple as that. And there you go. It's built. So now your site is deployed. So that's what you're going to do for your portfolio projects. It's just that simple. Any questions on that? So that's how you're going to use Netlify to deploy your projects. All right. Yes, Zach.
Sorry about that. For the Netlify, I guess I must have missed that as far as just signing in. You said we could sign in with our username for the course, or we
no, for the GitHub account. So whatever your GitHub account is, you can sign in through that. So log in with GitHub, and then it connects it if you're signed in.
Okay, good to go. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, and then go to sites, add new site, deploy manually, go to the folder, wherever your GUI or wherever you have the folder, and just drag it in, and then it's deployed. So the folder should have your HTML, your CSS, and your JavaScript file. And then just take the link, and that's the link you use for your portfolio website. All right. So what's in it for me? So by understanding these advanced concepts in HTML and CSS, it gives you the ability to further design and customize your websites. A responsive website lets users view websites from any device. So we want to make sure that we have this responsiveness when we create web applications. Because, say for example, when you're in smaller views, like, I don't know when you guys probably remember, you guys are probably too young for this, but when a smartphone first came out, they used to look, whenever you go onto a full website, everything looks distorted. So they come up with these things called like media queries, where as the page, as the window gets smaller, it becomes a format, so that it becomes a better format for you to view. Like, look at Facebook. Facebook has a mobile application. For you to view applications on smaller window sizes, we have these things called media queries. And that's the whole purpose of responsive design. It allows users to view websites from any device instead of that chunky format where everything is distorted. Zach.
Is that why you was mentioning the other day about their realm?
Correct.
Something like that? Okay.
Yeah. So like, you're going to try to, like, you guys are software engineers now, so you're going to make web applications so everyone can view it. You have to make sure you view it from every angle as opposed to one. Back in the day when the World Wide Web first came about, that was a struggle. But then as time progressed, companies like Facebook, Netflix allowed us to view things within that type of window frame. So that's what's in it for you. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is forms. So these forms are things that you see every day. So let's think about, I always use Netflix, but Netflix. This box right here is a form. Facebook, if I go on to facebook.com, this is a form. These forms are what you're going to use every day. So part of being a software engineer is knowing how to create these forms and utilize them for the functionality of your website. So it's an important way to basically gain information from users. We can sign people up. We can log people out. These forms are very essential, especially when we get to React. That's what you're always going to be creating, forms. And you're going to be styling these forms to make them presentable for your whole web application. So that's why it's very important that we get into the concept of learning about forms. All right, so here we go. All right, so the forms typically work like this. You all know the procedure. You guys worked with forms before. User inputs information like a first name, a last name, a phone number, and an email, also a password and a confirmation to the password. And you hit the submit sign up button, it sends that information back to your backend server, and then you do what you want with that information. You store it within your backend, you allow them to do some other functionality, but when we get into backend, because we're all going to get to backend, but that's like further down the line, you will see the importance of this information gathering from these forms. All right, so here's a typical example of what a form is. So you have a text field, you have an email address field, you have a number field, you have checkbox, radio buttons, text area, and a drop-down item menu. So these are what you usually would use when you create forms. So let me do a demo on forms. All right, so it's already created the files. Let me go here. All right, so I'm in my week 6 folder. And I'm going to move to forms. So CD into my forms. And let me actually close all of these out. And I'm just going to type close and code. All right. So now I have my forms. Oh, sorry. I actually went to the wrong one. So CD, documents, 23, and then 23. Oh, wrong one. Wrong bootcamp. 23. 23. Then CD into week 6. CD into forms. And I'm going to code. All right. So typical HTML template, we have this, the docu-type. So you're just going to do the shift exclamation point, and then you're going to get this template. So let me actually go live. It's nothing that we have yet. So let's go back to my form. So usually when we're dealing with forms, we first, before we deal with forms, let's first talk about this one element. The first element that we deal with is usually this input element. So this input element, it is this element with just an opening tag. The reason why it's opening, because usually when you have input fields, it's just to preserve it for text or a checkbox or anything else like that. So when it doesn't need anything like, when you have an H1 and you have content inside, it doesn't need content because it's going to create whatever that input field is for you. So the type text means I want to create a text box, and I can actually show documentation actually better. So MDN forms, right? So the form, so MDN forms input, right? So the input is an HTML element used to create interactive control. And there's different types of inputs. We have the input button, we have the checkbox, we have the color, we have the date and time. And all these things are what we can do by just changing the type, right? So the input tags don't have a closing tag because we don't need to specify any text. What we want to do is put things inside of whatever the type of content that we have. When I hit save, you're going to see where this bar is in the way. All right, you see this box. So let me go back and comment it out and then show you. So there, presto. Input type text, that means text box. So if we go to documentation, type text is the default value, a single value text field box, right? We don't want to put anything inside of it. All we just want to do is say that it's an input box. That's why we don't have that text field. All right, so with this input field, we can have many attributes. So we can have a name field used for all text inputs that's basically going to identify what info we want to place inside of it. So I can say name and set that equal to first name, right? And what this does is it identifies that this is a first name box. If I had another input box, I can say it's last name, shift option down, and just say last name. So we can just identify what the name we want for these particular fields. So this field is used for all text inputs. And it's a way to identify what info or data we want to put inside, because you just want to identify everything for every input box. You just don't want the input box to be blank. You want this input box to be for first name and this input box to be for last name. Cool. And then with these input boxes, we can also put placeholders. I can have a placeholder here. So just like how if I go into GitHub, right? So let me actually log out and show you. So you see how it says search GitHub? I can have an input field that can say search GitHub, just a placeholder to let the user know what to write in here. So that's why we'd use placeholders. So that is an attribute where I call it placeholder, and I can say first name. And then this one is going to be a placeholder called last name. Let me make sure I'm on the screen. And you're going to see when I hit save that it's going to have first name and last name written in. First name and last name written as a placeholder. Usually when we create forms, we want to make sure we have some kind of label. All input fields need to have a label because these labels basically help identify what type of input field it is. So you're going to create this label, tag. You're going to use this label tag, and it has a for, and I'll go into all the other attributes thing because we want to know where we want to send that information, what action or what the input field is. So, and it also gives us that little text. So say, for example, I want to have like first name next to it, I can label and identify each field. So if I said label first name, right? First name. I have this first name field, but how would it know that this field belongs to this first name box? I have to give it an ID. So when I give it an ID, I just put within this for category to say that this input, this label is for this input field. So remember the ID selector, the same way how you would write it. You say first name, ID to identify it, and it's for that first name field. So this first name thing is for that identifier. So you see when I tap this, it immediately goes to that field, that first name field. I'm saying that this label is attached to this first name block. So we always want to have the our labels attached to an input field, right? So if I wanted to do this for this last name, does anybody know how I would do that? Raise your hand. I want to attach a label to this last name field. Zach.
Well, I would just copy and paste what you just did for the label for the first name and
Yeah.
just last name in it.
Yeah. So you'll create the label, what it's for. So last name, it has to be the same, because if I separate it, the ID doesn't match. You see how this does not go to the box. So when I tap this, the browser doesn't know that this is an input field for this box. So it has to be the same thing as this ID. This ID identifies that label. So it's for that ID, right? So then last name for last name, colons, and then I'm going to put an ID here for last name. So when I hover this, you see it attaches to that box. All right. So another thing about forms is that we usually don't place form. Like I'm not going to create a form with just a label and an input and multiple labels and inputs. I have to wrap it in this form element, because when you guys get into submission, like submitting data, you want the whole entire form to submit. So just like when you log in, so like how I said with Facebook, when I type in my email and my password, I can hit the login button and then that whole form is sent. So it sends my input, my email, and then it sends my password all at the same time, as opposed to if I created a button and it's submitted, only the button will be submitted by itself. So by wrapping this whole thing with these form tags, I can ensure that this whole thing is a form. Because remember, everything in HTML is a box. So I want to make sure that this is identified as a box. So if I go back to this, you're not going to see anything different. It's just that if I inspect it, we know that this whole thing is a form. Right? So if I hit this submit button, it can redirect me. So there's also, you can also create buttons. So sorry, if I can spell. So button, and then with buttons, it has an ending and a closing tag, because we can put text content in. So I'll say submit. Right? And remember, all of these labels, inputs, and all of this, why does it go line by line? Why are they connected next to each other? Does anybody know what we talk about elements and referring to elements? They're on the same, they occupy the same width. Why are they occupying the same line? What kind of elements are these label and input fields and buttons? Zach.
It seems like I'm the only one. I know a lot of other folks know. I think it's dealing with inline, sir.
Yes, they're inline elements. They're labeled next to each other because they're inline elements. Just be aware that no participation means random calling. So just want to make that sure. So thank you, Zach. I appreciate that. All right. So submit button. So we have the submit button. We have it attached to this particular form. So what this action attribute does is whenever our form submits, we can redirect ourselves to somewhere else. So let's say, I'm just going to use Google. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to say, all right, whenever my form submits, I want you to redirect me to Google. And usually what you would never usually do it this way. Usually will say redirect you to somewhere else and then take your information. Like you will say redirect you to a certain path. And when we get into back end, you'll understand that more, but you're going to say redirect you to a certain path so that they can collect that information for you. So watch when I click this button, what do you think is going to happen? So if I put Chuck Lucas, I hit submit, it redirects me to Google. All right. There's also another thing called, where is it? What is it? Action. And then there's method, but we won't get into that. And there's method field. It's basically when we get into like types of verbs, HTTP verbs, you'll understand it, but there's a get. You can say like, I want it to be a get request or a put request. And I don't want to complicate things, but that's what it's used for. What type of method you want this to do when you send it back to your backend server, Pete?
So looking at the method attribute, how would that differentiate from that and from on-click method?
So the
I'm sorry,
method,
I meant to say on submit. I meant to say on submit.
yeah, so the method has nothing to do with anything more particularly with like on submit. On submit is when it's a type that you would use when you want the whole form to submit information and send it backwards. But the method is just going to basically describe to what the form, what kind of, it's hard to describe if you don't know backend. So it tells you what kind of thing. So if when I submit this form, do I want to update something? Do I want to go to a new, like, say, for example, if I want to go to like if you go to google.com, sorry, let me show you. So if I go to google.images, you're going to see like this path right here. I don't know if you can see, but it says /images. It sends you to another direction. So it's hard to describe it. So like get, put, like update something. What are you doing with that form? Is that some more forms updating something that you have previously? Is it sending you to a new route like how we're doing with www.google.com? Or is it creating, or is it what? Update, create, or is it deleting something? What do you want this form submission to do? So it's mostly that. That's what this action and method is. It's telling you what method are you doing, like you're seeing right here. What method do you want happen when this form is submitted? Do you want it to update something? Do you want it to get something, or do you want it to delete something? That's mostly what it is. It's very complicated when you don't know backend, but that's what it is. It's just trying to like put you in the right direction of doing these HTTP verbs.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. All right. So that's form. We also can have different types of input fields. So label, right? So like I said, if you go to MDN, where is my, MDN, I can create a password field. So we'll go to password. So if I go to password, it can basically allow me to type something and hide my password as opposed to showing it. So if I go to label, I'm going to say for password, right? And then I'm saying password, and then input type, and I'm going to change this to password. And then the name is going to be password, and then the ID is going to be password. Yes,
Thank you, sir. My question was about the name attribute. What was the purpose of this?
So the purpose of the name, you just want every field to be identified by name. You want to know what that field is. So this name attribute basically says that this field is just a first name field. We just want to describe it. So we just add it. It's just for descriptive purposes. So we have that. Where is my browser stuff? Sorry, 1 second. Did I close the window? This goes, oh, I know what happened. I went to Google. Yeah. So basically what I want to do is when I identify this, I want this input field. You see how it says last name? I want it to have attached to it an identifier, or that's the ID, but it just identifies what that input field is. We use a name attribute. It used to identify what info or what data we want to go inside of it. That's what it is. It's just for our use case. And also for screen readers. So it allows them to say, all right, this is a name field, so put your name here. Or sorry, this is a first name field, put your first name here. This is the last name field, put your last name here. Make sense?
Okay, got you. Could you use it for other functions, like to use it with JavaScript for certain type of attributes?
Yeah, so mostly you're going to use these within forms. I'm pretty sure you can probably do that within other things too. So like HTML and JavaScript are different. So it depends on what you're using. And if you're in React, then yes, but in other cases, no.
Got you. Got you. Thank you.
That's the way.
Yeah, so if we're using name as a reference for the box, what's the point of using the placeholder next to it?
The placeholder. So the
Yeah.
placeholder, I want to, like, say for example, this first name, say for example, you're a user and you don't know what to type in here. So if I remove it, it's just basically like this little descriptive thing. So you can just know, it just makes it even more descriptive. The more descriptive you are, the better. So like placeholder just adds that hidden text in there for you. And this ID attaches the label to it. That's why you have to have an ID.
Got it.
This name adds the placeholder, and this ID adds that. And then where is it? Oh, sorry, password. And then I can put placeholder here too. Password. And so when I type it, you see, it does that. It hides the password for you. We can also do an input field. I'm going to just put this all down. Sorry, I can also do I can also do an email field. So shift option down. I'm just going to make this email. So, and the purpose of this is so whenever I'm using it, like say for example, if I wanted to submit something and it doesn't have the correct specifications for it, like if I want to submit the form, it can give me an error and say that you need an @ symbol to submit the form. So like these input fields are great ways of identifying things and building our forms things. So just, like I said, just make sure like you review documentation and then try to see which ones you want to do. Like you can have a max length property on passwords and emails. You can have a min length. Like it's just, the naming thing is just mostly based on form control. The more control you have, and when we get to React, you'll also see this as well. The more control you have with every input field, the better. You just want to control everything as much as possible. All right. So, what else? So we talked about buttons. We also can do, what else? I think that's it. We have checked. Yeah, so we also have a checkbox. You can also do a radio version of it too. Go into details. You guys can play around with this if you want. Any questions on forms?
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I hope it's not a dumb question. So when it comes to the password, like when you type it and it gives you an error if it's the wrong one, is that something that it also comes from like action and method, or is it something that is like comes from somewhere else that it understands you with like X user is putting the wrong password? Where does that come from?
Yeah, that's going to come with your JavaScript logic. So you're going to use JavaScript with that and then compare the two passwords for it.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Yeah, input validation. Thanks, Woody. Raymart. Raymart, did you have a question or? Oh, you're muted. My bad.
Sorry. Sorry. I just had a quick question. So is there a way to attack the same like text words? Like let's say you wanted to change all the password text in like one go, like to like something else. Is there like a shortcut to do that?
What do you mean by that? Sorry.
Like let's say you wanted to change the text from password to like some other input field, like last name or something. Is there a way to tag all of those password?
Oh, so you're
Yeah.
talking about like if I want to change it like here? Oh.
I'm not sure if there's a shortcut for that.
Yeah, or you're talking about like if I want to change this to like last name, all of
Yeah.
yeah, I mean for Mac it's Command D, probably
Oh, okay.
Command D for you all. I try not to use them, so I don't want to confuse you. Sorry about that, but I usually would have done it that way.
All good. I just want to know. Thank you.
All right, Rick.
How about when you show your password?
Show password. Yeah, so what is in the input field with show password? All right, so not sure. Placeholder size. Where is it? Don't allow the browser manager to fill the password. Don't know. I'll look into that for you. Sorry. It's weird. Yeah, I'll look into that for you.
I think you have to toggle type between text and on password.
Toggle type.
Type, so it's being hidden, right?
Yeah.
So your type is password. So you're gonna have to toggle between, like write some type of logic that's gonna toggle in between the type and the.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Candace posted in the chat.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, you're gonna add a text box to toggle. A checkbox. And W3 Schools is a great resource to use. Like I said, as you get more advanced, you rarely work with HTML and CSS. So I don't really remember certain commands, but thanks for that. I appreciate it. All right. So that's it for forms. Any question on it other than that? All right. Let's go to the next thing. All right. So we talked about action, target, methods. All right. So typically when you create a form, like I said before, the form, you have an action, you send it to whatever page you wanted to go to. You have a target, and then you have the method. So the method is whatever the request you want to use, and then you're going to label it. Each form should be labeled, and then you identify those input fields with an identifier. All right. So here's the next thing. So the next thing we want to talk about in regards to like CSS enhancements is the CSS grid and CSS flexbox. So flexbox is a way how we can take a one-dimensional layout and basically maneuver it any way we want. We can basically take our rows and columns and style them on the same level or move around. So say, for example, when you have a nav bar, you know how it was tricky to position everything on the same line? Flexbox allows you to do that, while grid is more particularly the whole thing. So it allows you to transform and create things based on their whole web design. So Flexbox, you do it one by one. Grid, it's mostly everything. So I would do the row and the columns together, as opposed to Flexbox, you would just do the rows. And when we get into Flexbox, you'll understand what I mean by rows and columns. But that's what that's the difference between Flexbox and grid. Grid is a multi-dimensional layout, so it does multiple things at once when you're changing it, while Flexbox can change one thing at a time. Right? Yeah, so both are layout models. CSS Flexbox is either row or column, and then yeah, CSS grid is either row or column, and then CSS Flexbox is either row or column. CSS grid is either a multi-dimensional layout module by having column and rows, and it's meant to make a customized grid for so when you're viewing a smartphone or tablet. So mostly when you're using like smartphone or tablets, that's when you use grid. Grid is fairly new. You can probably get away with most things with just Flexbox. So you can lay out your stuff with just Flexbox. All right, and then common CSS debugging tips. You're going to need to make adjustments accordingly. So tips to making adjustments is try to comment out rules one at a time, then turn the rules back on to see. And I'm going to go through an example of this and remove elements altogether. Add border styling so you can see visually where elements. Like I said before, in order to truly understand CSS, you have to understand that every element is a block. And all these elements are blocked. So since they're block elements, we can adjust them accordingly. And I purposely just put boxes around everything so I can see how I can orient them. And practice using the dev tools. So let's actually get started with some Flexbox things. All right, so I actually created a repo that you guys can clone. And I'm going to put it in the chat because it's going to be a lot to just write everything that I'm saying. Where is it? Flexbox demo. And remember, you go here, copy, and do git clone in whatever folder you want it to be in. So there's the website. I'm going to put it in the chat, and I'm going to put it in Zoom, Slack. All right. And then you can clone it and follow along. CD, S, CD, Flexbox. All right. So here is what I have. Once you're finished cloning, I have this div, and then inside of it is a container, and inside each of it is children. So these children are all boxes, right? And then in my style, that's CSS, I'm styling the H1 to do text align, give it a font family. I give it the font size of 6 rem. I put a border around the big box. So you're going to see that when I go into, so we can identify the parent. And then I put a width in it, and then a margin to add spacing, and then a box for all the children. So I created width and height for created all the little children. So usually you're not going to do inline styles for this, like color and stuff like that. But for this particular demo, I'm doing it. So just because I'm doing it doesn't mean you all should do it. Don't do inline styles here. It's just so I just want the CSS to represent all of Flexbox. So let me go live and just show you. All right. And then, all right, so here is my Flexbox. Wait, I didn't put my styling. Where is it? So this can go. Yeah, so container, and then border 4 pixels black. And then container 12 pixels. Where is my border? It's weird. Did I link the styles? No, I didn't. No, I did. All right, let's get started. Flexbox, and okay, this is weird. App.css. Okay.
You wanted to display rectangles?
Yeah,
Wait,
it's
sorry.
not. Wait, did I remove a styling? Yeah, it's supposed to have a box around a border. Why is my border not showing up?
I think the link that you have, it says style CSS, but the link in the HTML file says app.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go. Thanks, Rashad. All right, so I have this box. All right, so back to what we're thinking about, like, so if you look at my HTML, right? This box, this big box is this container right here. So this box that I have surrounded around this is this container, right? That is the parent container. And then inside of it, I have all these little children. So these children, so this box, this color, come on. So this box, I can do the side view, but I don't want to distort things. Yeah, so see these colors. So this child gets orange, this child gets, red, orange, yellow, green, all these colors. So these little colors, all of these are inside of this container. Does anybody know why they're on top of each other? Why are these individual colors on top of each other like this? We've talked about this multiple times. Why are all of these elements? So what type of element is this? Anybody but Zach. So we talked about this. Zach said it already in the beginning of the class. What kind of elements are these? Kevin.
They're block level elements.
Yeah, these divs are containers. They're block level elements, meaning they span the whole width. They go on top of each other. So H1 elements, H2 elements, paragraph tags, all of them span the whole width of their container and they move everything down the line. So since these are wrapped in divs, they go underneath each other. This is an important concept. That's the reason why I keep trying to like say to you all, when you guys learn margin and padding in the box model, that's something like, this is what you all should be doing when you're practicing. Like whenever you're doing, create boxes and try to practice them and move them along. That's how you're going to get better with CSS. If you don't practice it, you're not going to get better at all. So by understanding what is a block level element and inline level element and being able to move them is how you're truly going to understand CSS. So like, for example, if I took this box, right, and I made it and I removed the width, you're going to see it spans the whole width of the container because that's what block level elements do. It spans the whole width of the container. But because I specified a width, it stays within that range. All right, so with Flexbox, so what Flexbox is, it's a layout method, and we use it for laying out items in rows or columns. And there's also a cheat sheet. So Flexbox cheat sheet. Send this in the chat, in the link. Is it chat? And then, so you guys can follow along. All right, so this is a complete guide to Flexbox. So this is basically what you're going to do. So with Flexbox, what you need is a container or a parent element, and we call that the Flex container, and then the items inside of it. So with Flexbox, we can orient things based on, we can orient the items in the Flex container relative to the parent. So the container is always the parent. So if we look at our HTML, go back to our HTML, and we see that we have this box. This is the parent. This is the parent because it's outside of it. And then inside of this is all of its children. So the first thing to enable Flexbox is that we're going to put that display flex property on the parent. And what it's going to do is take all of its children and put them in a row, left to right. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my CSS, and I'm going to put display flex on the parent. So this is the parent. So I find the parent, and then I put display flex, and watch how you see magic works. So if I go here and then I save it, they all go in a row. So it's just like when you guys create nav bars, it allows you to put everything on a row as opposed to doing all that particular styling. We can use Flexbox to our advantage to basically maneuver items within a container. Remember, like I said before, all items all elements are boxes. So that's why like this little color orange, this other orange, this yellow, this other green, this other green. I can put items inside of it and move it. Just like when we had those little things when we create that little shopping list and you had those little list items in it. You put those little list items in boxes and then you move them around. That's basically what all HTML and CSS is, or HTML is. It's boxes and you maneuver those boxes within CSS. So we have this parent container, and then these divs are all boxes and they have styling and color. So what Flexbox does is it basically allows us to have a bunch of items, these flex items inside of it, of a container. And the first thing we do is we enable it, like we did with display flex. And so all of them now become flex items. So if we go to our style sheet, in the parent container, I did display flex to basically say that every child that you have, I want them to become flex items and orient themselves in this row fashion. So by default, display flex, it puts them in this row direction. All the children are lined up in a row. It immediately moves all of them up and puts them in this row. Yes, Zach.
You probably already mentioned this, but I was just kind of curious in your style CSS in the container section, does it matter what row that display is on? Because I see something like on row, say I can put it between like row 9 and 10, or does it
Yeah,
matter?
you can put it anywhere.
Oh, it's not a hierarchy?
It's just a nitpick for me. I like display top, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I can put it here and it still works the same way. Remember, CSS reads top to bottom. So as
Oh,
long
that's
as they don't interfere with each other, the bottom one will always take precedence. So if I had another display, it will take the last one. That's it. But you mostly will only have one of the same property. Yeah. All right. So display flex. All right. The first thing you do when you want to display flex is find the parent container and put this display flex inside of it. All right. That's the only way Flexbox would work. I can't do any Flexbox properties unless I have this display flex in the parent. We put the display flex on whatever container we want to display the flex inside of. And this governs how the inside contents will behave. So now, once we have display flex on it, we can move the inside contents around. So the first thing I want to describe, the next thing I want to describe is there's two axes that you should remember when you're thinking about Flexbox. So let me Google. So Flexbox axes. I'll just go to images, right? So with these Flexbox axes, we have the main axes and the cross axes. The main axis moves left to right. That's the main axis by default. And then the cross axis is top to bottom. Initially, this is how it's going to be. The main axis is going to be left to right, and the cross axis is going to be top to bottom. So main axis is going to be left to right, cross axis top to bottom. This is how you're going to remember Flexbox. You remember you put the display flex in the parent, and you know that you have to remember the two axes, the main and the cross. The main and the cross, these directions can change. And I'll show you how they would change based on how you put the direction of flex. So remember the two axes. The main axis by default is left to right, and the cross axis is top to bottom. All right. So left to right. So you see how it goes left to right, and we have this space because we still have width that all of these are not filling. All right. So the first property that you would probably deal with is flex direction. And this tells you what direction you want your flex items to move. So flex direction by default is row. Because remember when we did, before we did Flexbox, right? Before we did display flex, they were all on top of each other like how block elements are supposed to be. But by default, flex direction is row, so it puts them in this row fashion. That's why when you saw when I put it there, nothing changes. So the flex direction is row, right? That's the default behavior, flex direction row. And sometimes you will probably specify that property even though you have a row, just so you don't have other styling things that interfere with your flex. All right. We can also do another way. We can also orient our flex direction reverse. So remember the main axis goes left to right. So if I do it reverse, the main axis switches from right to left. So now you see all the contents that start from the right side and then goes to the left side. So it starts right to left. That's how you're going to switch them. So the main axis, instead of going from left to right, now goes right to left. That's why you see one is on the far end side. All right. That's what row reverse does. So row reverse switches the orientation of the main axes. All right. So now, all right, now we want to, if I want to make these top to bottom, so by default, it's row. So nothing's changed. I don't need to put this here if I don't have to. But if I want to put them on top of each other, I can use column. So let me minimize that. So now it goes from top to bottom. The main axis now switches. The main axis is from top to bottom now, and the cross axis is left to right. So whenever you put, sorry, where is my, I don't know why I minimized it. Whenever you put flex direction column, your main axis switch. So main axis initially is left to right when it's a row, and cross axis is top to bottom when it's cross axis top to bottom when it's a row. But when it's a column, main axis then becomes top to bottom and cross axis become left to right. And this is an example of it. So you put the container in here, you have the items and display flex or inline flex and the direction. So left to right initially, right to left if you do row reverse, and then top to bottom, and then bottom to top if I did column reverse. So if I did column reverse, and then I save it, one is going to be start from here, and it's going to go from top to bottom, or bottom to top. So now you see top, or bottom to top. So the main axes now go from bottom to top as opposed to top to bottom. So whenever you think of flex direction, think of visualize the main axes. If you do row, left to right. If you do row reverse, right to left. If you do column, top to bottom is the main axis. And then if you do column reverse, bottom to top. And then the same thing with the cross axes. So initially with row reverse, the cross axis is top to bottom. When we switch it to column, the cross axes become left to right. So these are important for when you're doing certain stylings on the CSS properties. So when you're doing, and we get to them, we have particular properties that work based on the main axes and that works on the cross axes. All right. So the next thing I want to do is, so let me actually put this back so I can do flex. I'll just do flex row again. Right, I'll do flex row. So let's say, so like the default behavior, so like say for example, if I increase the width. So let me increase the width of one of the width of the children, and I put 300. You see, how Flexbox works is it's not going to go to a new line. It's basically going to say, all right, shrink these elements so they can take up the whole width, but don't give it that size. So there's going to be certain situations where we want to have that same property that we have and have our flex contents wrap. So if I go to inspect, you see each of these are 200. And you see when I have here, I made the width 300. So what I did is I lost 100 from each. So they can span the width of my container. And my width of my container is 1200 pixels. So it shrinks it so all the contents can fit on the same line. So there's going to be situations where I need to make all my items wrap so I can get my full space. Koi?
Just to clarify on the keeping everything in the container. So even if you change the width to say 1,000,000, it would still automatically make it so it would fit inside a container, correct?
Yep. It's always just going to be the same. For this particular case, it's always going to be 2000.
Gotcha.
It's going to span the width regardless, because Flexbox makes everything stay within the same, on the same line. Who else raised their hand? Zach.
So what if you put different sizes within those? Does that make a difference as well?
If I put a different size on this parent container, it's just going to do it to the point where I can capitalize the parent. So it's going to make them grow, but it's still not going to give it the right size that it has.
I mean that every box has the same size, but can you change the size to like for different size on each one of the boxes?
Yeah, so we can do that individually. We'll get to that. That's like a flex, like a line self, or we can flex grow and flex shrink. We can do things like that. Elham.
Thank you, sir. My question was, what if we add margins to the small boxes? Is that going to adapt with the margins as well?
Yeah, let's see. I'll do 5 pixels. So it adds space, but it gives it the added space that it needs to fit across the thing. So it'll space the elements, but it just gives it the space it needs to occupy the full width of, was it 1500? Yeah, so that's all it's going to do. It's probably going to shrink the box content a bit, but give it a full width.
That's great. Thank you very much.
No problem. All right, so go back a bit. All right. Yeah, so we have it here. So there's going to be situations where I want it to wrap around. So I can do this flex wrap property. So flex wrap. And then I can say wrap. By default, it's no wrap. So that's why it does that. So now the contents are their actual size. So remember, I have 300 for the width. They flex around. So they're going to wrap all the way around. All right. Let's say if we did flex direction column. Right? You see what happens with column is it's never going to, what happens with the column is that the flex box by default, since I don't have a width on here, this big box is going to just grow based on what are the contents that I have inside of it. So if I keep, so let me actually put a height of 1000 pixels. You're just going to see the content box get bigger because I don't have a height on here. Because how boxes work in HTML, they just continue to grow no matter what. So if I wanted to wrap those contents around, regardless of what the size is, I would put a height on this one. Where is it? Let me say a height on my parent. And I'll say a height of 2000 pixels. And then you see it wraps it around. Let me actually do smaller because I'll do a height of 500 pixels. And then I'll do a height of 1000 or 1200. But you see, it's going to wrap the contents around with a flex wrap. So when you do column, it's dictated by the height. And that's how you can wrap it around. Does that make sense? So that's flex wrap. So if I go here, where's flex wrap? So flex wrap by default, all items fit on one line, and you can change that and it allows items to wrap as needed with the property. So by default, it's no wrap, but you can do wrap, and we can also do wrap reverse. So we can do wrap reverse, and then I go here. Oh, sorry, wrong one. It wraps them in the reverse column way. Let me actually do row because it's actually easier to do row. So I can just comment this out and then switch this to row. You see, it wraps them in reverse way. So from the bottom all the way around. Cool. All right. So now I'm going to go back to the default settings. So row, change this back to 150 for each. And then make this and remove, oh, actually, I want to remove the height and keep the width. All right, so this is back to the regular display. So remember when I talked about, so when it's flex direction row, what is the direction of the main axis by default? So we're in flex direction row. Where does it go? Anyone, you can put it in the chat if you're scared to talk. You can do it anywhere, just say something. Left to right, yep. So you can go left to right. So that's what it is, left to right. So there's another property called justify content, and that dictates the main axis. So whatever the main axis is, that's what justify content is. So if I did column, what is the main axis? Candace. Oh, I can't hear you, sorry.
Sorry, the cross axes?
So column, what is the main axis? Where does the main axis go when you put it in a column?
Top to bottom.
Top to bottom, yeah. Thank you, Rob, too. All right, yep, top to bottom. So now there's this property called justify content. Justify content is solely based on, when you think about justify content, this allows us to distribute our flex container, our space along our main axis. So whatever our main axis is, we can move items based on the space we have. So flex direction row, let me actually move this, like move this a bit. Now say flex direction row, right? Now I can use justify content. So justify content, and there's multiple different ones. There's flex end, so flex start. So by default, it's flex start. So flex start is the reason why everything, when we're pushing it left to right, starts at the top, starts from the left, and then whatever available space we have left, it's free. That's why it's like this. So when I do this, nothing changes. So that's flex start. Now, if I go to flex end, this is the main axis, and the main axis goes left to right. So if I do flex end, how are the contents going to move as with this left to right direction? Where are they going to go? Where is this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going to go? Is it going to stay in the beginning part, or is it going to move? How is it going to move? Does anybody have a hunch of what it is? It's going to move to the end. Yep. Thanks, Rashad. Main axis, left to right, flex end moves the items on the main axis to the end. We also have center, and everybody knows that. It aligns all the items in the center, so our content gets pushed together towards the middle, and the extra space is left on the sides, right? Flex start, extra space is pushed towards the end. Flex end, extra space is pushed towards the beginning. But flex center, all the extra space is pushed, as you can see right here, on the ends. There's also another one called space between. And this takes whatever the content is and pushes the space, pushes all like the 1 and the 6 towards the end, and then make sure that we have space in between elements. So we're not going to have space on the ends. We're going to have space in between each of the elements. Oh, wait, space between, sorry. So contents get pushed to the corners, and then we have space in between each element. So this is all the main axes. Yes, Kevin.
So what happens if the width of the container decreases with the space in it?
Yeah, so if the width of the container decreases, so would the space. So if I did 500, see how they get squished?
Cool, thank you.
1200, right? Yep. Now I won't have to, he still have to use margin and padding, Zach. Brian.
Yeah, okay. I was just about to ask with the margin, like if you made that bigger, would it mess with the 1 and the 6 on the sides, or would it just stay pushed out to the sides?
Yeah,
If you
so
added the-
regardless of, like, if I made what bigger, each
Or
of
like if you added the margin to the box.
add margin to the box.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
space
would it
between,
space out like a margin on to the ends of 1 and 6?
oh, so like margin left.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll push it.
Oh, okay. So it's still okay. All right.
All right, so then we talk about space between, and like I said, this is a cheat sheet, so always use this. A lot of times I forget certain concepts after a while, so just remember. So remember, flex start pushes everything to the start, flex end to the right, center, space between, and then space around, and then space evenly. All right, so we didn't do space evenly, so I can do space evenly. Go. So space evenly. So when we do space evenly, you see it has the white space around. So space evenly is, oh yeah, space around. Spaces them evenly based on their content. We do space around, and it allows them to have space around each individual element. Cool. All right, so let's say we put this as a column. So remember, column, the orientation switches. The main axis switches when we do column. So right now, I have to actually make the height bigger. So let me actually put some height. Right? And let's go here. Oh, sorry. Right? So remember the main axis. So if I did justify content flex end, where would this go? Because this is the main axis. So now it goes from top to bottom. Where would it go if I did flex end on justify content? Yep, it's going to push it down. So I did justify content, flex end, it pushes it down. If I did spaced around, push the space around, space evenly, push the space evenly, and then space between. Space between puts them both at add. So remember, it changes when I change this to column. Now the main axis is top to bottom when it's column, left to right when it's row. All right. Now align items. So now align items is respect to the cross axes. So by default, when it's row, right? And yeah, it's row. And let me actually move my justify content. This is how it looks like when it's a row. Yes, Elham.
Question about the Flexbox. If you shrink the window, the browser window, the box is gonna shrink as well, and the content inside it.
Wait, let me see. No, it stays the same. And that's something we would probably do with media queries. We'll get to that.
Got you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Dang, what am I doing? This one is all right. All right. So now justify content, main axes. Align items deals with the cross axes. So if I go to align items, this is how align items work. So remember the cross axes in the row fashion, it's top to bottom. So if I want to move my row to the bottom, I'll do flex end. If I want to remove my row to the center, flex center. If I want to stretch them, flex stretch. If I want to go to the baseline, I can do that. So line items, that property works for the cross axes. Justify content for the main axes. So I'm in my row, flex. All right, so display flex. Right. Justify content space between. Can actually hide this. I'll do align items, flex end. And this is at the top. So that means when I do flex end, they go to the bottom. because this represents the cross axes. Cross axes in row by default is top to bottom. All right, let's say, all right, and then we have flex start, which goes back to the original format. We can also go to center. And that's the center. And then let's say I wanted to center this whole thing in the middle. So how does anybody know how I would do that? How would I center? Remember the cross axis and main axes. How would I center this whole color box in the middle? Sam.
Sorry, you would do text align center.
Text align center. With flex block
Sorry.
properties. Sorry.
Oh, my bad. Never mind.
That's cool. So remember how it's row, right? This is a row fashion. So remember what the cross axis, the main axis does is left to right. And the main axis is top to bottom. So how can I move this and put this in the center? I want this in the middle. How would I put that in the middle of my container? Think about the cross axis and main axis, the properties that we have. Elham.
Could you use justify center for this?
Yeah, you would. So if I did justify content center, that moves what? What is justify content center going to do before I show it? What is that going to do?
It puts the content in the center of the axis.
Yeah, so it's left to right. So where would it be? This would be in what center? Would it be in this row or would it be in the middle?
If the source code has the flex properties to row, so it will be in the center of the row.
Yeah, it's going to be in the center of the row. Correct. So you see that's in the center. So how am I going to bring this down to the middle? Does anybody know? How can I bring that down to the middle? Think about your axes. So justify content is left to right. How can I bring that down towards the middle? What axis is that in the row fashion? Zach?
Would that just be center?
Yeah, but which property? So remember, justify content represents main axes. What represents the other axes? What property we talked about? Pete.
Would you need to use the attribute for axis Y?
No, we wouldn't need that, but that is a way you could do it.
Could you do vertical alignment on this?
Oh, Sam. Oh, sorry, you can't do. Sam said it. So think about the main axis and cross axis. So remember, left to right, right? So when you just told me, Elham, when you told me that you want to put this content in the center, right, on the top row, because remember, it's flex start by default. So you're centering it on the main axis, that's left to right. So that means on the top, flex start, you center it on the top. So what controls me moving this top to bottom? What axis controls that? Brian.
The cross.
Yeah, the cross axis. So the line items property controls that cross axis in a row. So if I put center, that aligns all the items in the center. So justify content moves it to the middle on the main axis. And then on the cross axis, remember top to bottom, I want to push it in the middle. So align items to the center. Make sense? Yeah, so that's why it's important to know these axes. That's the whole juice and meat of Flexbox. What is like, so if I change the orientation to like when it's row, by default, it's row. If I change it to column, I put it in the center, but justify content, remember, if I take this out, justify content is now it's top to bottom. Line items is left to right. So if I wanted to, so you see, now on the main axis is left to right for sorry, now the main axis is left to right. Sorry, it's top to bottom for the justified content, and the cross axis is left to right. Yes. Zach, sorry.
Yeah, I would just, not that game called Flexbox Froggy, now that actually makes sense now, because I'm connecting it now, because that game that's on it's on the GitHub. It's
Yeah.
one of the games that deals with just the Flexbox. And
Yeah,
I couldn't
and that-
figure out what that all meant, so, okay.
Yeah, so, and that is something that I do recommend you all do. Play that every day until you get the handle Flexbox, because that's how it's going to work. That's how I learned it. I just kept playing Flexbox Froggy. When I used to do projects, I played Flexbox Froggy. So I would just play Flexbox Froggy. That's your friend. All right, so if you don't know, Flexbox Froggy. And I can put this in the chat in case you didn't see it on the GitHub, and then I can put it here. Thank you, Zach. All right. Where is it? So here. All right. So Flexbox. All right. So now there's another property called align content. So how align content works is it only works whenever these items are wrapped. So let's go back to row, because it's always easier to do it in row first. So let me go back to row, right? And I want it to wrap. So that means I have to increase the width of each box children. So I'm gonna say 500 pixels. And remember, they shrink them, so I want it to wrap. So if I do flex wrap, not wrap reverse, but just flex wrap. Oh, sorry. It wraps them around, right? So what align content works, it only works when we're in this wrap fashion. So say, for example, you see all this space I have in between, I can basically squish them all together with align content. Flex end. And that takes all the space and moves them down together like a pancake. I can do, and that's across the cross axis. So remember, anything that says a line, it's cross axis. So cross axis in this row form is top to bottom. So it's going to move everything from top to bottom, left to right. So we have the flex start, which is the default view. So we go flex start to go to the top, or not for this because it adds the space. And then we have center. Oh, sorry, this box is all in the way. And so center, so let me do flex center, and all the items are pushed to the center. And then we can do space around. And it can add space around back to what it was default. So align content allows us to do space when it's wrapped. Make sense? Yeah. So like I said, Flexbox is something that you just have to practice. All right. Now we can also do a property called align self. So I can align individual. So align self. So you see how all the times we're doing it on the parent container. So if I look at this is the parent. I'm doing all my flex properties on the parent. But there may be times where I want to do my flex properties on individual children. Those other flex, like align content, align justify content, align items, they only work on the container, on all the children together. But if I want to move particular things based on that, I can give it another, so I'm going to give it another class. I could do special. And with the special property, I'm just going to target that special and do align self. So let me move this a bit. So, and let's actually put this back to row. Oh wait, it is in row. Let's move this wrap a bit. Wrap. And then let's put this back to 150 pixels. Right? I want to move 3 down. So 3 is attached to this third one. So this special, let me move this up a bit. So this 3 is attached to this box special. And you can have multiple classes attached to one class. You just have to have a space. So if I wanted to identify the special, I can do, how do I identify a class in CSS? Anybody remember? Brian.
Period.
Yeah. So I can do period special, right? And then what I want to do is move the 3. Whatever that class is, I'm going to take it, align self, and then move it. And it's relative to the cross axis. Because remember, anything that says align is relative to the cross axis and move it down. So align self, and I can do flex end. And it takes 3 and move to the end. I don't know if you saw that, but. And then when I unhighlight it, and you see, that's what I'm talking, when we talked about like how to test code, you turn things off and on with these comments. That's usually what you do. What is box special? So box special, I added an extra class. So you can add multiple classes. I can have like new class, or I don't want to put that, another thing here, like here, or this and that. And I can identify multiple classes within this one thing. I just have to have a space. So I'm saying I want to identify the box for one class, I can style it, and then another class for special. So that's what the space is. So when I go to my CSS, I can identify just the special property. Sorry, Brian, you still have your hand up.
Yeah, I had another quick question. For that comment on the line, what is the shortcut that you're hitting to quick comment on that line?
So command / so if you have Windows, it's control. I hope it's so. Hope that's it. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so always turn things off. That's how you, like, literally, that's how you're going to learn the CSS stuff. Like, you just play with things like this and just keep playing around and turning things off and on. Like when you see code from other places, and like, say for example, the demo code we gave you all for your portfolio, you would use it and then turn it off and on and try to get an understanding of what they do. And that's how you're going to learn CSS. Elham.
So when you move the box down, the spaces are still reserved. Is that an empty space, or it kind of stretched it down all the way?
Yeah. Yeah. So we can make these other items grow in respect to that, but it's just an empty space right now. So I can target individual items and make them grow. I can use flex grow and make one item grow with the empty space that it has, twice that. And I'm gonna get into that.
So if you add another pile of boxes, another row beneath that, and then you move 3, is it going to pass the other row and then go all the way down and leave an empty space behind it like that, or it's going to jump on top of it and go down?
Let's see.
Those has to be inside the same parent, right?
So they have to be within the same parent. So,
yeah.
So if I did another div, so let's see if I did this down. Yeah, it's just going to add them all to the same line and then move it all the way to the left.
Would it start a new line if you add BR, or that doesn't work inside Flexbox?
I don't think so. So if I did a break.
Okay.
Yeah, so all those things, like usually that's how you learn, like you just keep testing things. So that's a great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you want to align, we can do align center. So special align center, move 3 to the center. And you can do the same thing with column. You can switch it and do the orientation for column. Cool. And then one more property I want to talk about, because I'm getting way too ahead of myself with Flexbox. It's one of my favorite things. So I can make one item grow. So you see how I have special? I can dictate how much available space. So if I go to my Elham, yes.
We just moved it in the cross axis when you did the align itself. Can you move it on both axes?
So align, anything that's aligned, it's always cross axes. So you only can move things in respect to the cross axes with that. But if you change the orientation, then you can move justify content. So if I said justify content, oh wait, so align items. I don't want to put it center. I gotta unwrap all of these. So yeah, you only can move flex align content based on the cross axis. So I have all of these are like causing it to inhibit. So flex wrap. See, so it's only respect to the cross axis. You can only remove align items in respect to the cross axis, not the justify content. But you can do like justify content left to right on, so let's say flex end. And they're just going to move all the items and just move that down. So it's just respect. So like I said, with this cheat sheet, or is it align items? Yeah, so align self. This it overrides the default alignment for, where is it?
So you can't use justify for that special class?
No, it only works for align self only works for that on the cross axis. So justify content is used, that's only going to move things based on the left to right or whatever we have, the orientation we have it. So if I do center, it moves items in respect to the center, all the items.
Yeah, but my question was about box 3. Like, if you can you use justify on special class to move box 3 only to the other side?
No, because remember what I said before, the justify content and align has to be on this parent. It can't be align self and align content allows us to align individual items. You can't do it justify content or sorry, align self and what was the other one? Align self and yeah, align content. Yeah, align contents. This actually goes here. So align content, align self and align content goes on the individual child itself. So you have that property particularly for children, not for the parent. So mostly all of those other selectors like justify content, align items, and flex wrap, they all go on the container of the parent where you do display flex on.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, yeah, so then we have this other property where we can dictate how much available space we want each item to grow. So flex grow. And I can make something grow in respect to the available space I have. So if I put, so by default, all of them are 1, but whatever item I put 2 on, it's going to make it, it's going to make it grow twice as big as the other ones based on their space. So if I remove all of this, yeah, it's the same as, yeah, stretch. So if I did flex grow, but this one's for a particular item. So flex grow, and I did 2. See how that expands the space for that. The available space that it has, it occupies that twice as big. And if I did 3, it's still going to be the same. So it dictates how much available space inside the flex container the item should take up. Any questions on that? Yeah, so there's a million ways of how you can use Flexbox. Take advantage of the resources in Flexbox Froggy. Those are best bets. And then practice with this if you can, and just try to see how different ways you can manipulate it. All right. All right, so next thing, DeWitt.
Yeah, can we use justify self without a special box, or is it not gonna
Justify
work?
self. I don't think that's a property. Is that a property? Did they say
Yeah,
that's a
just
property?
I didn't test it, but I just
Oh, yeah. So maybe that's probably what would do. We'll change it. So I did justify self. Justify self. I've never used that, sorry. And then online, self. And what does justify self do? Justify self property sets the way the box is justified inside its alignment container. So I can do stretch, center, up, down. So yeah, that probably is what it could work. So I can do start. Oh, sorry. Let's see, start. That's end. Yeah, I don't know what it's doing. Yeah, that's something you probably would have to play with. I've never used it like that, but that's a good one. Yeah, so just practice with these and should know. Justify self, should move it based on it. We can do stretch. It's spell stretch. Oh, that's probably it. Not sure. Something you have to work with. Any other questions?
Maybe that would work on box 1.
On box 1?
Yes, if we put a special class for box 1, maybe that would work. Since it's all the way at the end, I feel like the other boxes around box 3 is blocking it from going left and right. And the example is also doing it on the either left side or the right side of the elements of the contents.
I don't see anything. Yeah, I don't know how to work that property. Sorry. If you guys can practice with it all you want. I don't know how that's probably supposed to work, but look into that. Yeah, just experiment with it and get a hang of it. That's it. But I mean, I've never really used justify self, but if you guys get a hang of it, let me know. All right. All right, that's it for Flexbox. Let's go to media queries. Media queries. All right. All right, so create our HTML template. So there's going to be times where we need to have a responsive design. So let's say, for example, I wanted to create a web page, and based on how I scale the width of it, I want like the styling to change. So the idea behind responsive design is, yeah, so the idea behind, oh, sorry. So the idea behind responsive design is that if the screen is this size or smaller, we want it to grow. We want a certain type of style or certain type of thing to go on with our content. So this controls what happens with different screen sizes. And when we're writing websites that respond to that certain screen size, we can basically manipulate it. We can change it based on if it reaches that max width or if it reaches that min width. Those are the things that responsive design does. So this allows us to create things for mobile applications. All right. So let's think about like this GitHub markup page, for example. So if I go back to the GitHub markup page, Sign out. As I'm decreasing this, you start seeing how everything starts changing. Like, look at this nav bar. Everything starts colliding to each other. So we can make styling properties based on how the screen window is. So that's basically what responsive design. As your screen size changes, we can maneuver our screen sizes to that. You can also have Airbnb, where they have all these images cards. As I decrease it, you see how it gets bigger, and then it gets to this one big page, one angle. And that's mostly how we would work with like mobile applications. All right, so we write specific styles for certain screen sizes, and media queries is what we use for that. Yes, Pete.
Can you describe it to me just a little bit about mobile first and why that's more important? I mean, and why that's important?
Why adjusting the screen size is important?
No, I mean, like, can you describe to me mobile first? I'm not sure if you heard of that concept.
No.
Okay.
So mobile first probably means like this website, all the designs or the CSS or whatever you're creating for it it's mobile first before anything else. So that's probably what that feature is. So any styling that you add to it, we're going to do the mobile style. Oh, sorry, I know what you're talking about. So mobile first is basically this. You would style in mobile, the mobile way first, like when you're doing your CSS or anything else, or you're building your web application, you style in the mobile view first, and then expand to the larger views. Because since the mobile view is small, we can basically see the things that we can adjust accordingly. But the large view, you don't really need to style that many things. So that's what it is. You had that mindset of doing mobile applications first. Always program your applications in a mobile application first, and then build your way up to full-fledged applications. Does that make sense?
Yes. So which side do you think will be easier? I mean, which particular side would be easier to start first?
It depends on how you go about it. So if you like styling, I mean, all of it is just media queries, like just adding certain media queries to it. It really depends on how big your application is. Usually everyone likes to program in that mobile first way. So it's up to you. It's up to your discretion. It's either or. The only thing that it's bad about if you do the regular way first, certain stylings are not going to work. Like, you see how everything looks all compact? You probably want to make sure that everything, when you expand it, works a certain way, as opposed to when you start from that big fledged application. Because, like, I don't know if you know old browsers before, but everything will be distorted if I minimized it, because certain sizes don't work. You understand what I'm saying? So, like, I don't know if you ever had the first like smartphone or something like that, like a Razor or something. And all those applications, whenever you would go on like Facebook.com, it would look, you couldn't really see anything on it. Like, it was very hard to distinguish. So that's why they build in a mobile application first and then expand onto the responsive design or the full-fledged applications.
That's cool. Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right, so we have this HTML template, and basically what media queries are is that it allows us to, like I said, like we can set specific styles and group them together so that they can only apply to certain conditions. And usually those conditions are based on the max width and max width of a viewport. And what a viewport is this whole browser window. So that's what a viewport is. It's this whole browser screen. This is a viewport. This right here is not the viewport. This is my computer screen, but the whole window for our browser is a viewport. So that's how we can adjust certain styles. All right, so yes, Elham.
So by default, the viewport size percentage-wise is 100%, which means that's what we're viewing right now. So when you shrink the window, does that mean that the viewport is also decreasing from 100%?
Correct. So it's getting smaller as we move it left to right. So
Okay.
it's just the overall space of this white browser stuff, like excluding the tabs. Tabs and like scroll bars don't count in the viewport.
Got you.
All right. So, all right. So I'm gonna create an H1. And yeah, so I'm just gonna create an H1. We're gonna say media queries. Right, and then I'm just gonna put some basic styling. So go to my style.css, make sure I link it. All right, style.css, and then I'm gonna put body, and I'm going to make it background color red. And then I'm gonna go live. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. Oh, it worked. All right, so you see, zoom in a bit. You see, my background color is red. So what I want to do is, as I adjust my screen window, the color changes. So how we do that is, when we first write our media query, we follow this syntax. We do @media, and we can do screen if we want, but I'm not going to do that. We can set min width. So remember, the width is the viewport. So that is the size of the viewport. So the min width basically just means that I want everything above that min width. So the least it could be is that width that I'm specifying. So min width, 800 pixels. So I'm saying I want everything that is 800 pixels or above. I want the body to be background color cyan. So if you look at my screen, all right, let me actually use an inspector because it's going to show the size. So you see, when I go to 800, anything below 800, it's red. And then when I go above 800, it's cyan. So that's what the media query is. So you do this @media min width, so 800 and above. I want the background color to change to cyan. All right. Let's say if I wanted to do when it's above a certain thing. So I can do max width. So max width means when it's 800 and below. I want it to be cyan. So we see we're above 800. But the minute I get below 800, it turns back to cyan. See? And that's literally what all media queries are. You create a condition, you do @media, create a condition, and you tell it the particular size you want it to be. Usually, sometimes we'll do this syntax where we'll do only screen. And this is for like older devices. So basically what you want to say is that for older devices, I want to use, I only want to run this media query for devices that are they're accessible to media queries, because older browser devices probably don't have media queries. So when it doesn't have media queries, it's going to run this like this. It's going to run it like this. And then it's just going to take the last color. So sometimes you want to put this format of adding media only. So that means only screens that can use media queries and that has a max width of 800 pixels. And that's usually like a format that you do, but you don't have to do it that way. And then we can also do another one, option down. We can do, let me just do min width for this. And then I can do min width 1200 pixels. And then see, when I go past 1200, oh, let me actually do orange. Sorry. Roll this a bit. I gotta do max width. So min width 1200 pixels. Oh, typo. So when I go past, you see I'll get orange, red. So we're doing body, red. We want a min width. So that means anything 800 and above, we have a min width of 800, we have it as cyan. And then anything 1200 and above, we have a body of orange. Yeah. So the reason why this condition works is why you would do it this way. Say, for example, you have it this way, and I didn't have it selected as media only, and it's going to take, this is not going to be red at all. So it's just going to be red and cyan. You see? So if I put this back, and I put it, now I'll probably get my orange. Okay. Medium, 1200. And option 5. Cyan, orange is 1200. Not sure why this is not working. Yeah, but the and property should allow it to stop. Any questions on that? So this is just like the basics of like what media queries, what you can do with media queries. Cool. So we can also do, what else is there to talk about? Queries. Oh, sorry, back to the slide. Yeah. So what this is, we can do a margin and padding. This is just doing a margin padding 0, and we're making it important. We can flag certain selectors as important, and that basically overrides everything that's basically interfering with it when you put that important tag next to it. All right. We also have these nth child selectors. So we can mark like certain children elements of like a li tag. So if I say I want the li tag, the third child of the li tag to be red, I can mark it this way, or the odd number to be red. I can mark it this way. And I'll go over that with a brief demo. And I talked about the important property. So the important property basically just overrides all previous stylings applied to that element. It's best practice not to use this for normal development, but this is used as times to override styles when we don't want to have, when they do not have access to the CSS. We're testing in the browser. So sometimes when your CSS styling is not working, you can hit this important tag. It's not recommended, but it will basically override it and allow it to display. And then we talked about how the selectors hierarchy is. So inline styles, the way I have the colors, that takes precedent. Then we have IDs. Then it's class, pseudo classes, and attributes, elements, pseudo elements. It just works itself down that order. And then we have these advanced CSS styling rule. So we have box siding. This is the elements width and padding. And then we have backgrounds. This controls the background of the element, and then DOM ordering. And then we also have Z index, and this allows us for like overlapping features that positions like HTML elements. All right. And then we also have these advanced CSS transitions where you can just do like a calculation where you want, like, say, for example, if I want the width to be 100 pixels plus 200 pixels of the added to the whatever element I have. So you find the element that has 100 pixels, and you can add 200 pixels to find the appropriate position you want the width to be. And there's like shorthands limitations to that. All right. And I think we're running out of time. But like I said, like these CSS methods, as they expand, they get more complex, but it's just more of like, just more things that you just have to like learn. in regards to that. Yeah, so so let me do this real quick. Like, let's say if I created a UL tag, I do li times 5. li 5. I can do, let me do Audi, Mercedes, do Ford, yeah, Suzuki. Right? No, sorry. And then let me minimize this a bit. Browser. All right, so you see I have, sorry, I have all these, I have these list tags. I can do an env child on that. So let's say, let me actually remove the background colors. Style, all these background colors. So let's say if I want to target all the even childs, so I can do li colon nth child, and I can do even, so that targets all the even childs, and I can put a border 1 pixel solid red, and you see it's going to take all the even child. So 1, 2, 3, 4 all get a border. So that's how you use the nth child selector. So the nth child allows us to target wrong box. Nth child allows us to target individual selectors if you want. So I can do odd. And you see how it switches to all the odds. We can also do it based on the 4th child. So I can do 4th. And it can just pick Suzuki. I can also select the first 3, and that's n plus 3. So that will select the first 3. So n, so minus n, negative n plus 3 selects all the first 3 elements. All right. Then what else can I do? I can add, let me add a div. And then let's say add a class div1. And then I can say, I can add a div main. And then I can do a p tag and put hello world. And then when I go back to this hello world, I want to be able to hover it. So I can hover this with the hover selector. So I can say p hover, and I can say background color yellow. So when I hover over it, I get a background color yellow. So it's p, the colons, and hover. All right. And then we can also do a shorthand thing, a border. So we can do border 1 pixel solid. And then we can do the numeric code, so 000. That can be black. So we can add a black border around our hover. Yeah, animations. Yeah, you can do animations. Oh, you mean, can I do animations? I wish. CSS is not my strong suit. I can admit that. We can also do calc styling, div1, and then you can do height 100%. height 100%. Where is div one? But yeah, it's just basic little things of, did I add a div one? Yeah, div one. Oh, yeah, I did. So div one gets the height. Where is it? Div one class main. Yeah. Yeah, so remember what height is. It takes 100% of the parent's width. So when we use height, so I go to my CSS styles, this height is going to take 100% of what the parent's width is. And that's it. Any questions? Just kind of sped through this for the sake of time, but any questions on this?
Yeah, so this is Ilham, by the way. So when you do 100% height for that, is that gonna be the height of the body, basically?
Yeah, so where is that div one? Sorry. Div one is, let me look at my code. Sorry, I need to look at my HTML. Div one is right here. Let me actually comment out these li tags to make it easier. And then this hello world. Yeah, so the height, the height of this div one is going to be, let me actually add a border to it. I'll make it easier. So the height is, so border 12, 1 or 2 pixels, solid red, right? And then with the height should be 100% of what the parent is. So the parent is, where is this index.html? The parent is the body. So whatever the default size of the body is, 418, is going to take the full height of whatever the parent is. And because when you think about these elements, the reason why it's not growing is because how the main body works is that it grows based on how many elements I have in here. So if I put
Right, yeah,
in here, it grows. So that's how the box size is going to grow based on that. So yeah. So you see how it got darker a little bit? It does that
yeah.
based on the parent's height. Cool. Any other questions? All right, yeah. So let me briefly, may go over a little bit, but let me briefly go over what's expected for this module. So taking what we learned, I know a lot of this is just very compact. Taking of what we learn, we want you all to create certain thing, like where is it? Picasso's painting. So you're going to create this painting using Flexbox. We didn't really go over grid. I feel like grid is fairly new, but if we had more time, I'll probably go over it tomorrow or Thursday. But CSS grid, you can do Flexbox, grid, all of that, and you're going to create these structures. So think about border radius to create circles. Think about how to get all these items. Like remember, everything is a box and how to get all the items connected. So where is it? I actually have a demo code that I created. Where is it? So, oh, where's my GitHub? Yeah. So you're going to create your own little painting. So see how we use Flexbox and you have items. Remember, all these are containers. These are the children inside of it and how you orient them. So this box will have Flexbox on it. This box will have Flexbox. This box will have Flexbox. This whole container, you will have the Flexbox, the flex end, and how you style it. You're going to do like a border radius, add some background color and those kind of things just to make these, just to get used to working on positioning and using Flexbox elements.
Question. So when you point this out, how do you change that box to circle like that moon?
Oh, sorry, I did not
Yeah.
go over that. Sorry,
And also, the whole box itself, it's the edges are changed. They're not sharp. How do you do that?
Yeah, so you're going to use border radius. So this border radius feature allows you to create a box. So remember, every element's a box. You can do border radius 50%, and it makes it, remember, respect to whatever the parent element is, and it makes it round. Did you see that?
Got you. Okay.
My bad. I spent way too much time on Flexbox when I should have been going over this, but get it. Like I said, I'm going to go over this again. This is not due until Friday, so don't stress yourself out. I'm going to go over the things that I forgot to talk about on Thursday. Any questions on that? You can get started on it if you want. Just know that the competency thing is available whenever you're ready. So you're just going to use Flexbox and all these other properties on this and pushing items, getting the hang of it. Cool.
Cool. One more question about the project. So I made my website, but when I'm shrinking the window, everything kind of pushes off. They don't stay side by side. It shrinks to a limit and then it drops down, it goes down. What would you recommend me to look up? I tried to look up several things on Google. I couldn't find any fix for that. Do you want me to look up anything specifically, like a tag or something?
So you're saying like when you adjust the window, it like moves?
Yeah, it goes down.
All right.
And also the background image, I set it the size to cover, but when I shrink it, it kind of has white border at the bottom.
Oh, that's another thing I forgot to do. Whenever you're working with CSS styles, it comes with by default like its own margin and padding. So make sure you set that to 0. So always set, like you see how I have it here, margin and padding set to 0, and I'll go over border box too. What I would recommend you doing is like looking up media queries and seeing when it gets to that certain size of that window, how do you want those items to display? So utilize Flexbox if you know how to use it, utilize all those other things.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Have a good night.
All right, you too. Oh, Pete, my bad. I just saw your hand.
Very fine. Where was the what was that website again where we're supposed to submit our URL whenever we're finished with the project?
Oh, Nellify. Do you want me to go over how to do it again or no?
Maybe that was a little too fast for me to catch up, to be honest.
All right. So Netlify. Oh, sorry. I cannot spell. I'm tired. Sorry. I apologize. I'm human.
I'm with you on that.
All right. So you sign in through your GitHub.
So Netlify?
Yeah. So that's Netlify. And it's going to do auto for me, but you sign in through your GitHub, log in through GitHub, right? And I have this auto, please just sign in, right? So then after you do that, you're going to go to sites, right? And then you're going to go to add a new site. And then you can import it through GitHub. I just don't like things going on through my account. So I just deploy manually. And then let me go to, was it documents 2207. I'll do week 4. Oh, wait, we're 2302. Sorry, documents.
I'm sorry, they want me to get started on that as far as like making my own accounts. I'm just like, okay, well, this is great.
Yeah, so you find the folder that you have the CSS and HTML in, that folder, and you just drop it in there. And then once you drop it, it's deployed. And then, yeah, that's it. And you just go here and you see it. That's my little grocery list. Is that cool?
Yeah, let me try here. Goodness gracious. I'm sorry, let me
Oh, my bad. You said it was telling you to do something else.
yeah, it wanted me to start up my account. I for some reason, I don't know why, but there's like the moment I now I'm just going through permissions and stuff like that. Okay. I'm gonna share my screen, show you my situation here.
All right, stop share.
Yeah, they just.
Oh, you did the repository.
Okay. Whatever that was, I just backed out of that. What anyway? So you want me to do sites?
And then don't import from Git.
Okay.
Deploy manually where it says or deploy manually. All right, yeah. So browser upload, and then find the file, the folder, and then just drag it in there. I don't like doing it through the Git way. It's more complicated. So,
Gotcha. Is that so? Does that still work within a cloned repository? Or
so if you have the repository on that, you can do it through GitHub. I just don't like the permissions thing. I just hate, I don't know, people try to jack your stuff when you keep adding your stuff to certain things. So I don't know.
yeah, I get it. Yeah, so yeah, so this is kind of what it looks like right now. So I had with what you were showing me before, with what you were trying to go with through CSS was something I was kind of stuck in, and that, you know, so with my body, everything looks fine, you know, but